Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. And take a moment, as always, to acknowledge that you are here and taking some time to continue to work on yourself. And for any of you that have given any thoughts to living in the past, either you feel that you do, or you feel that you've moved beyond the past, or whether that depends on the moment. This episode is going to create some good awareness for you, because I'm going to be sharing with you how many of us, in spite of our efforts, are still living in the past by bringing forward past patterns into the present. And that can be harmful, because that can translate into reiterating our pain right through to impeding our development of the mindsets needed to create lasting change. So we're going to be digging pretty deep and extracting the repeated stories that we tell ourselves and hauling out those ingrained beliefs that we have about ourselves that are subtly creating breaches into the connections with ourselves, and those connections that we work hard to establish in our efforts to turn our lives around. And it boils down to that old saying that if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So for those of you new here, my name is Lee, and I guide others to navigate these challenges and inspirations of breaking from past harming patterns. And that could mean the patterns of addiction, or that could mean being codependent, or that could mean being a perfectionist, or anything that brings varying degrees of chaos into our lives. So hit the subscribe button, and more importantly, hit the notification bell for weekly reminders of this guidance, because often we get busy and we don't think about the next discovery and what that could mean to bring some extra ease into our lives. There are also resources and links in the description below, and as always, in the comments, please let me know what you think, share your thoughts, any questions. And if you're too shy to share here, then at least share your thoughts and your plans with yourself. So let's imagine that there are a bunch of us sitting in a room together, and we decide to share our thoughts about still living in the past. There would likely be a broad range of situations. Some would say, I occasionally find myself dwelling on memories. Some would say I'm stuck in the past by triggers of thoughts and feelings. Or others would say I have lots of shifts away from the past. And I know this based on how I feel and how I think and where I am in my life. And that's all great. Acknowledging where we are is important. But think about this. Regardless of where you fall in the above spectrum, it is important to frame living in the past as continuing with patterns. And when you begin to understand the past as thought processes and not just events or triggers, you are opening up more possibilities for yourself, such as lasting change and a deeper understanding of yourself, which can lead to success in many things like relationships and career, and prevention from returning to old patterns. And for all of you here, either affirming that you're still in the past, or those realizing that perhaps you could be living in the past more than you thought, it is key not to get discouraged or to become too hard on yourself. Because we're all up against some heavy hitters when we have to think about the past. Because we are also up against our very adaptable yet stubborn brain. And that brain is programmed not to like change and not to be comfortable around challenge and to stick with what it knows. And it's frustrating because our brains are very trainable, but they need a lot of coaxing. And that means a lot of work for us, because inevitably, by default, our mind selects certain memories. Our minds select certain feelings as a default to a triggering situation. And the brain can then create consistent behaviors, also known as habits, and these can remain unchanged, also known as patterns. So I want to start by having you extract some proof of your past patterns still here within your present life. And maybe you've already started a list once you heard this, but regardless, I want you to pair that with the fact that patterns exist in the stories you create for yourself, in the beliefs that you have about yourself. So let's start with a very simple example. Let's say that back when you were a teenager, someone told you that you didn't sing well. And chances are you took the words of that music teacher or that aunt or that potential boyfriend or girlfriend, and you took their words seriously. You believed them. And not to mention, you also had the hurt feelings and maybe felt embarrassed, which all deepens the belief that you can't sing well, at least in this particular example. And so that follows you into the next singing opportunity that you have for yourself. And you tell yourself that I can't sing well. And that influences your behavior, and really who knows what else that influences. And perhaps it's not that big of a deal, but that's the story you stick with. That's the story you tell yourself, that you can't sing well. So you never try it around others. And let's just leave it at that, because no one will ever know the consequences of you believing that you could never sing well, or whatever circumstances that you're recalling right now as we discuss this. We'll take this example and extend it to I don't do well in job interviews, or I'm not very good at math, or I'm too sensitive, or my jealousy always gets the better of me. What then? The point is, when you keep telling yourself the same story, each time the same circumstance arises, and you never challenge that, you may never create alternatives to that belief. Then it becomes something that is accepted, and it becomes the story that you go to, and the story that you believe, and the story that impacts your life. So this is where self-sabotage can be explained, and relapse, and returning to old behaviors, because we don't deliberately set out to shoot ourselves in the foot, at least for the most part. But we are all programmed not to like change and not to like challenge. So before we enter a situation, we may have a fear of failure, or we may become nervous, or we lack confidence, and that becomes life-changing or altering, or however you slice it, it can boil down to being damaging. So how do we intercept this? We need to shift the way we think about our inabilities and the things that are approachable and that are changeable. So your first strategy here to help you detect past patterns in the present is to start taking an inventory of your negative self-talk. And make this like a course assignment, and grab a pen and paper or some type of documenting method, because you want to take a tally of when the negative self-talk occurs. What triggered it? What was the context of the situation? And then you want to step back and put it into one of three categories. Was I told this about myself? Is this something I told myself? Or is it a combination of both? So this inventory of negative self-talk will present some good opportunities for you to detect patterns within yourself. And one, it is an easy start to this involved process, because those bashing words to yourself are very detectable. And two, it confirms that you are starting the mindset shift of retelling the stories that you tell yourself. And it gets you thinking about the inaccurate things that you tell yourself. So now you have new discussions with yourself. Perhaps you could say, yeah, I do remember going to that event because I remember feeling nervous and I remember feeling ignored, and therefore I didn't go to the next event. And maybe I think I can't sing because of that time I was told that in school. So these are very basic and simple examples, but hopefully it illustrates how examining your negative self-talk will get your investigative juices flowing, because you will start to notice things once you open up that dialogue with yourself about the stories that you tell yourself. So the second strategy is to create a list of any recent or upcoming events that you feel will trigger your limiting beliefs that you have about yourself. And that could be a possible deadline or needing to have a serious conversation with someone. And follow this by detailing what you typically tell yourself about these situations. And that is the recognition part of this strategy. The next part is to present alternative words to yourself by extracting how you would prefer the situation to be, such as, I can meet a deadline, or I can speak to that person with confidence. And this step isn't about you believing this is possible. This step is about tapping into how you would like things to be. And a good tip here is to treat the situation with decent accuracy and situations that sit well with you. And another tip, which is more of a warning, just because you're making efforts to shift from your dialogues to yourself, don't necessarily expect that things will change right away or that you will see immediate consequences of your intentions. And yes, once again, I'm raining on parades, but expecting too much too soon could lead to an old thinking pattern, which could lead to discouragement. And that opens the door to that old habit of self-destruction. So be aware, because even within your deliberate efforts of changing the stories that you tell yourself, you need to realize the old patterns will still try to prevent you from the very thing that you are intending to achieve. So this is where dedication to your practice and your desire to stop carrying forward your limiting beliefs will need to remain strong. And that's the typical rule for lasting change: patience along with practice. So strategy 3, make a list of your usual self-destructive patterns. And is that giving up too easily? Or is that not listening to advice? Or is that burying your head in the sand? Or is that feeling sorry for yourself? And whatever it is on that list, acknowledge that these are actual patterns and behaviors that have a history of keeping you stuck. Now, once again, that's the recognition part. And for the self-help portion of the strategy, once again, make a list of circumstances that are present, that are upcoming, that could give these patterns a chance to surface. And once again, create approaches that you would prefer to have in these scenarios. And strategy 4 is to take all of these inventories and scenarios of the past patterns and present circumstances and future anticipated events and detailed patterns and desired approaches, and create some good one-liners that detail the person that you would like to become. And perhaps that goes something like this: I speak honestly with myself, and when I don't, I visit with myself. I am cautious to protect my intentions with boundaries that work for me. I trust my ability to speak with confidence, even among intimidating situations. I always reach out when I need help. I have a reset button that I use often as needed to keep me grounded and keep going. And think of your situations and add to these desired stories of yourself when the times are good and you're feeling accurate and you're feeling positive, and also the times when you're feeling challenged. Remind yourself that you have pulled yourself out of challenges in the past with patterns of resilience. And therefore you have the ability to draw upon the thoughts and behaviors that you need to help keep you going and to take you a step further, and to affirm to yourself that you have the ability to reach these grounded and healthy destinations for yourself by creating new perspectives and sticking to the encouraging stories that you tell yourself. And just start practicing that, tracking your negative self-talk, designing your new approach to your previous limiting beliefs that you have about yourself, and create and enforce new beliefs about the person that you want to be, and visualize the person that you would like to become. So I hope that this gives you a good entry point into detecting hidden patterns in your present life, which over time will lead to lasting changes for yourself. And there is a lot to think about. So once again, there are resources in the links in the description below. And as well, there's the link to my website, recoverywithlee.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Recovery with Lee. And let me know what you think about all of this. Share it in the comments and share it with yourself. And think about how you talk to yourself now, and think about how you should talk to yourself to become that person you want to be in the future. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself, and see you soon.